right, our attempt to figure out what is the Pardes, right? We talked all about Elisha ben Avuya and Acher and right, what he did, maybe what his sin was, what caused him to sin. What is the Pardes? Right? So let's review the original Gemara. Let me actually put Seymour for you. I am gonna put the source sheet. Shoot. Hold on 1 second.
I'm now on a PC and on my iPhone.
All right, I'm gonna find this. There we go. What is the Pardes? All right, in your chat, whoever Tat's iPhone, I guess that's Tot, like Tati.
That's like a topping. That's how it arose.
That's how it shows. All right, so it's in the chat box is the source sheet. Let's just take a look at the original source again, and then we'll try and figure out what is the Pardes. So that source is as follows, right? Tanu Rabbanan, you have the English as well. Arba'a nichnasu Pardes. 4 people enter the Pardes ve'eluhein. This is them, right? Ben Azai, Ben Zoma, Acher, and Rabbi Akiva. And then Amar lahen Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva says to them, Magian etzal avnei shayish tahor. When you come to the pure, right, marble rocks, al tomru mayim mayim. Don't say water, water. Mishum shenemar, because it says dover shkarim leichavin leneged einai, that you can't stand before God if you are going to lie. Ben Azai hates umes. Ben Azai peaks, and he dies. Allah b'kasav omer yakar be'inei Hashem ha'mavtal chasidav. Right, dear in the heart of the eye is the right one who dies or as mavet to his chasidim. Ben Zoma hates v'nifka. Right, Ben Zoma looks and he is injured. That's interesting. The English says demented. That is interesting. Demented is a different word, right? Demented would really be nishtate, like a shote. Okay, then never trust the English translation.
Whose translation?
Probably the old Sansino. You can get it online for free now because they got so hammered by ArtScroll. They're not even printing it. They put it online and it's free. That's how you know you're waving the white flag and you're dead. Right? Put a fork in it, it's over. So it's on halacha.com or something with a KH, very fancy. Right? Of him, scripture says, right, you found honey, did you eat enough? Right? You're gonna eat it and then you're gonna throw it up. Acher hates it, right? Kitzes benetil, Acher cuts the shoots. Rabbi Akiva yatsa b'shalom. Rabbi Akiva comes out okay. Right. What is the only right? So it seems like Rabbi Akiva is great. Ben Azai seems to die a hero's death. Ben Zoma not so much, and Acher we spend 4 weeks talking about.
Why is he called Acher at this point already?
Because it is right of what's to come. Right, meaning it's just foreshadowing what's to come. I think in other versions it actually is Elisha ben Avuya, but here we have in this source Acher. Can you tell from this at all what's the Pardes? What's the only hint that's in there?
Pure marble and board. Pure marble.
That is the hint. Does that help you?
No.
No, not at all. But that is the hint. Right? Pure marble. Don't say water, water. Right? Because Dover Shkarim, so look at that pasuk, and then we'll go through some of the sources. Right? If you lie, lo yichaven leneged einai. Right? Whose eyes are those?
Hashem's side.
Probably.
Yeah.
Right. So at some level, we're sort of in front of Hashem somewhere, and there's water and there's marble, and that's all we got. Okay. Not a lot to go on. So if you look at Rashi, right, first place we start, Rashi says, and this is unbelievable, Nichnasu lepardes, alu l'rakia al yidei shem. They went up to the heavens via the name, right? Whose name?
Hashem.
God's name. I mean,
Mhm.
somehow they're using the magic of God's name and they have ascended to heaven, right? And then if you just keep, right, let's just go through Rashi. Shayish tahor, right? Mavhik. It shines like clear water, right? Then he says, Al tamru mayim mayim, right? Don't say water, water, yeshkan, ech nelech. How are we going to go? Like, how are we going to travel? Which is not exactly what I would have thought would have been the issue. And then he hates it, right? He peaked litzad hashchina, right? I mean, literally looked at the Shechina. What happens when you look at the Shechina? Right? Raiders of the Lost Ark.
You die.
You die. Right? I mean, so according to Rashi, now he doesn't go through the other people, but according to Rashi, you go up to Shamayim using God's name. You're in God's presence in Shamayim. Apparently, Ben Azai died a happy death. Right? Ben Zoma got injured. It totally must have, I don't know what it did to Acher, and Rebbe Akiva could handle at some level. But that's essentially, when we say they went to the Pardes, it means they literally ascended to heaven by the magic of God's name. I don't know what that means. That's cool. I have no idea what that means. And Tosfos immediately jumps on that, and Tosfos says, wait a minute. Nobody goes up to heaven. Like, it doesn't work that way. Right? That's fairy tale stuff. Well, Tosfos doesn't say that. Sorry.
Okay.
Tosfos doesn't use the word fairy tale, but he does say, right, nichnasu lepardes, kigon al yedei shem, like through God's name, v'lo alu lamala mamish. I mean, they didn't really go up, because that's crazy. Right, open parentheses, close parentheses. Ela hayanira lahem kemo she'alu. It was as if they went. Right, if Yossi Bik, if you're watching this on video, I know you're away. This is not a psychedelic hallucination. Okay, sorry. He has a theory. We have to debunk it. All right, but I mean, what happened? What does Tosfos mean then? If you didn't really go up, are they dreaming about it? I mean, is it a meditative state?
Magic carpet.
No, Rashi's a magic carpet. Rashi is the magic carpet, and the power of the magic carpet is God's name.
So some of them had a vision or a nevuah, not a nevuah.
Well, some sort of
All
vision.
together. It seems like it.
So it's hard to know what Tosfos means. Listen, at the end of this, we're not going to actually know what the Pardes is. We're just going to have different directions in terms of what the Pardes is. Tosfos does not want to believe that they're going up, but it's some sort of mystical vision. I don't know if you can have a group mystical vision. Should be cool. We should try it.
Is there anywhere to knock where more than one person has a vision?
I
share.
mean, Har Sinai, I guess, possibly. Well, revelation, not so much of a
Yeah.
vision, different. No, again, right. The most important part from Tosfos is that they're not really going up to heaven. And then now we'll kind of shift this, and this is actually a beautiful piece in the Maharsha. Okay, so the first paragraph of the Maharsha, again, I'm not going to read all of it in Hebrew, but there is no English for the Maharsha. Just doesn't. Nobody cares enough about it in English to actually translate it. That's how it works. People, you have to have an audience who's going to read it in order to translate it. And I guess there's no audience for the Maharsha. So the first paragraph, I'll just walk you through it. Right, he says, and this is a little bit different. Like he says, look at Rashi and Tosfos and the parish of the Aruch. Kineu pardes me'inyan gan Eden. Right, this is now a little bit different. This is not maybe heaven is Gan Eden. Shehi genuza letzadikim. Right, it is there for the tzaddikim, and that is the place where you have all of the souls. Right, you know what we say? Your soul should be bound up in the bond of the living. Where do you think that is? That's the Pardes. Right? That's literally what he says. And then if you look at that one line after, right, Uvesefer Yashan Matzasi, in an old book, I'm not sure if that's Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam is the author of the Sefer HaYashar. It's unclear who that is. Bizel Shono, and this is something fundamentally different. Nichnesu lepardes hachachma, v'hi chachmat Elohut. Right, and this is not a mystical vision. This is not some kind of seance. This is not going to heaven.
Oh,
This is not any of that. This is, right, probably mystical exploration, but not in time or space, in thought. Right? And this is chachmat, the wisdom, the divine wisdom. Right? What's interesting is that's generally how we translate Pardes, right? Pardes is an acronym that stands for Pshat, Drash, Remez, Sod. Pshat, simple explanation. Drash is the allegory, if you will, or right. The Remez is the hint, and the Sod is the secret. Right. So if that's, we get that from here. Right. This is not going to heaven. It's not Gan Eden. It's not where the souls are. They shouldn't have been learning this, and they delved too deeply. And then he actually takes you through what happened to each of the people. It's a pretty fascinating piece. So we'll just go through a little bit, right? Why does each person react differently to the wisdom? Like, how do you die from wisdom? It's a good question, right? Because if you're not, Rashi said you looked at the Shekhinah, you look at the divine presence, you die. Okay, I get that. Wow. Raiders of the Lost Ark is my vantage point, but right, the Torah does say Lo Yirani Hadam B'chai. So that I get. I mean, I don't know where you go for that, but yeah, if you look at God, you die. Makes sense. How do you die from wisdom?
Heart attack.
Heart attack.
I mean, you see something so,
But it's wisdom, meaning
but it's like
it's not a vision.
no, but you just wisdom of, you can't believe that that's, you hear something or see something that's so unbelievable.
That would be something. I agree. So he says as follows, right? The last paragraph on the first page. Ben Azai Heitzitzumes, mitoch shedavka nafsho be'ava rabba, because his soul cleaved with a great love. Devekut amiti, a true cleaving, right? To upper ideas, dvarim elyonim, that are fundamental, right? Behetzitz be'or hazahir, and he saw this like, right, the clarity of light or something, but he was so cleaving to divine wisdom that his soul just left his body, right? Like he, right, right, Ra menucha kitov. He saw this great resting, and he just never, and his soul just never went back to its body, right? Because that's how much you can cleave to God through learning. But that's why the pasuk says, "Yakar be'inei Hashem," you're dear, right? In the name of Hashem, you are dear. You just got too connected to God, and you decided, I love being connected to God. Why go back to my mortal body? Okay, right? Fascinatingly, where do we know that somebody could do that? I'll give you a hint. It's in this week's parsha. 40 days and 40 nights I did not eat and I did not drink, says Moshe Rabbeinu, twice. How does he do that? According to the Rambam, he simply transcended his humanity. He was learning Torah, he was connected into something else, and he didn't need to eat. Of course, Moshe Rabbeinu decided to go back to his body. Right? This is actually a very beautiful description of Ben Azai. He was so holy and so connected. He said, I'm just staying with God. I don't know if his family appreciated that, but okay. Right, and he says specifically, "V'lo k'divrei mefarshim shira shchina umes." Right, It says it's not like those people. That's literally Rashi, right? Rejecting Rashi. It says because why if Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't do it, clearly Ben Azai couldn't do it, and that's not what it could mean. Right? And then why was Ben Zoma injured? What does it mean injured? So this means demented, not injured. That's where the English gets it from. Right? If right, the last 3 lines of the page, Shaloya Shalom B'Malos V'Yushav Adas. He wasn't fully complete, and his brain wasn't like fully set. And since he also saw the light of Torah and crazy things, he just couldn't handle it. And then at the end of the second to last line, Minitra Fadaito, right? He went nuts. Now he's in Bellevue. Right? We had to put poor Ben Zoma had to go to Bellevue. Oh, that was after we got him in the Haggadah. Okay. Right? We got him in the Haggadah, we sent him to Bellevue because his brain was fried because of this, divine overload of a mystical thought. Okay, right. Elisha saw things, but he saw wrong things. He learned the wrong things, and that totally fashmeked him. Right, but we're going to leave that first paragraph on the second page alone because we've done. We've spent some time on Elisha ben Avuya. Right, look at this is actually a fabulous piece. What about Rabbi Akiva? Right, Rabbi Akiva, Allah b'shalom, Yara b'shalom. And if you look at go down the second to last line in that paragraph, it says, he didn't go beyond the border of what he should have been learning. He didn't overload his brain. Like he knew where to stop, and he didn't keep going. If he had kept going, well, so either he was smart enough to know to stop, or he was holy enough to know to stop, or somehow he knew to stop, but he managed to stop it and not fry his brain. But I think if we take a step back, right, the fascinating question here, which is the argument between Rashi and Tosfos on one hand and this Sefer Yashar on the other in the Maharsha is, right, what really is the Pardes? Is this an intellectual journey or a spiritual journey? Not that an intellectual journey can't be spiritual, but is this a thought journey? Or is this right, as Laurie says, a magic carpet ride to heaven journey? Are there souls of people floating around? Like what's actually happening? The fact that we can have such an argument with such different paths tells you what? We don't have the faintest clue. Right? Meaning there's no good tradition on what this is because one went this way and literally one went this way. They're so fundamentally different in terms of their approaches. Now, maybe they're reflecting on what they think it is, right? What would drive you crazy? What would lead to this? But I think that's that is number one. That's our general approach, right? What is the Pardes? Is it going up to heavens or hallucinating heavens or thinking you're in heaven, or is it? When we say that somebody who's 40 years old can start learning Kabbalah, like those kinds of things. I don't know. I mean, that's a made-up number, and you probably shouldn't be learning Kabbalah for most of us, right, without background and whatnot. But the idea there is that that you can understand the concepts, or if taken to the extreme, maybe they will fry your circuits and destroy your brain. That is, again, I think as a general approach, that certainly is, right? If you look at the middle source there, right, you'll see Abram ben Minahar, and I actually have a nice biography, one of the gifts of the Bar Ilan. Abram ben Yitzchak literally from the mountain, right? 13th century in the Provence area of southern France, a friend of the Meiri, right? So he says, right, that he quotes Rashi, that it wasn't just the name of God, it was the name of God. But he says, Va'ikar the Pardes HaChochma. I mean, the primary is that it really is about wisdom. And then he takes it through, and it's just a nice summary, right? Is Hatzitz looking that you literally looked and saw the Shekhinah? Is it peering into wisdom? Right? So looking at God or peering into wisdom. Right? And he thinks that the second is preferred. Right? From there, we could even get crazier descriptions. Look at Rabbeinu Chananel. So Rabbeinu Chananel is early. He's probably 11th, 12th century. Right. I mean, the descriptions are fun. Let's see what we can make of it. Perush, Kineu Pardis Me'in Gan Eden, Shiknuzel Tzadikim. Right, that we've seen before. Right, this is like Gan Eden, that is for the Tzadikim. Kach Osa Makum Umakum Ba'arvas Hashem Shamos. Right, it's in the Arabos up there where the Shamos of the Tzadikim are truos are bound. Umefurosh Behechalos Shayu Chachamim Ha'ui Lamida Azu Mispal. Right. It is explained in the Hechalos that Chachamim who were able to get to this midah would daven, and they would minaken atzma mikol davar tuma. They would get rid of all, something that would render them impure. Vitzamin, and they would fast. Matbilin, they would go to the mikvah. Umitzaharin, and they would they would become tahor, they would purify themselves by mishtamshim b'shemos, right? They would use divine names, vitzofin behechalos, they look to the heichals. V'roin heach mishmaros hamalachim ma'amadim, they could see the angels in their ma'amados, in their charges, right, in their rotations. The heach heichal achrei heichal ifnei heichal, where they were and where the houses were and where the palaces were. It seems like these weren't the only four who were trying to do this. Right? There was a process that you could actually go through and work on yourself and purify yourself and jump in the mikvah. Maybe there's something funny in the water. Never know. You never quite know what's in the mikvah water. Well before chlorinated mikvah water. And if you go to the Ariz mikveh, you just never know. You never know. Something you do once in your life, you never do again. Right, and then it says, right, Vitzivo some of Akiva. Akiva commanded them when you get to when you get to the Abnei Shayish Tahor, right, when you get to the marble, which might be part of the Heichal, don't say water, because there's no water there at all. Right? Really, it's the image of a world. Right? So don't know what that means, but right, they're trying to figure out what it is. I don't know where he gets that from. But it's an interesting description. Just a second, turn the page here. Okay, so all of that is very interesting. It's again, there's not actually as much as you would think of material on what the Pardes is for that very reason. Right? Is it from Shemos, Shamayim, sort of Shamayim? Is it wisdom? How do we get there? What are all of these sources ignore? Think about the question I asked you in the beginning. What's the hint in the Gemara? It's the only hint in the Gemara. Right? Don't say water when you hit the marble. They ignore that, right? So what's fascinating is they are trying to answer the question of what the Pardes is without actually using the one item in the Gemara which tells you about it. And at that point, you have to take a step back and say, well, that's not okay. I mean, the Gemara gave us a hint. What do you do with that hint? So I found an article by Professor Shalom Rosenberg. It was a great Baal Machshava. It was actually not such a long article, or I have a lot more to say about it. But he says that the only person who actually takes a stab at it is the Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim. Right? The Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim, in a long piece that is somewhat confusing, right? But he talks about like ideas. It's almost like this Platonic idea of ideas versus the form. he's going through all that stuff, which the Rambam liked a lot. Like he really was a big fan of all of that fun stuff. But look at the last page, the guide for the perplexed. All right, and I'll read it to you, and then we're going to try and come back and figure out how this applies to our Gemara and what the Rambam is teasing us with. It is therefore clear, he says, that there has been one common element called water, which is afterwards distinguished by three different forms. One part forms the seas, another the firmament, and a third part is over the firmament. All of this is separate from the earth. Right? There's mayim, there's marachafet al pnei mayim, there's all kinds of, right? When the Chumash says vayabdil bein mayim lamayim, he's playing on all of that. The scriptural text follows here a peculiar method in order to indicate some extraordinary mysteries. And now he jumps right to our source. It has also been declared by our sages that the portion above the firmament is only water by name, okay, above the heavens, not in reality. How does the Rambam know that? Our Gemara, what do you mean? Four entered the Pardes. Rabbi Akiva said to them, when you come to the stores of pure marble, do not say water, water. For it is written, he that telleth lies shall not tarry in my sight. Consider, if you belong to the class of thinking men. There were no thinking women at that time, sorry guys. The Rambam was notorious for that. How clearly and distinctly this passage explains the subject for those who reflect upon it. Understand that which has been proved by Aristotle in his book on meteorology, and note that whatever men of science have said on meteorological matters. Right? The Rambam believes that the water in our Gemara is what? The heavens and above the heavens, right? There's water, but because there's water in the sea, there's this and there's that, they're not the same. So if you say water, water, if you think that these two are the same, then you've obviously missed the boat and you're lying before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now he doesn't, what does the Rambam not tell you? What the marble is. But that we might have to never know. I guess Professor Rosenberg thinks that he's kind of teasing us and giving away some of it, but he doesn't want to give away all of the secrets. Very much like the Ramban doesn't like to give away all of his Kabbalistic ideas. So the Rambam is sort of teasing it for those who can figure it out, but not laying it out there. But if this is, I don't know what this is, but certainly the Rambam's approach to this Gemara is, right, which is now, by the way, fascinating. Because if I had asked you before, who would the Rambam agree with, the thought journey or the magic carpet ride journey? You would have told me,
Thought journey.
of course, the thought journey. Where does he actually go? Magic carpet ride.
Magic carpet.
It's kind of fascinating, right? It's like like the thumb is working overtime here. The Rambam thinks that, well, so one of two things, but it seems like. Like it's not so 100% clear from here what he really thinks, because this is a very confusing piece. But the Rambam clearly thinks that we're talking about either going up to heaven and looking at these two pieces, or it's some kind of thought journey into creation and Bereshis. That I couldn't tell you, but it sounds a little like it's the magic carpet ride, which is very striking for the Rambam. But the Rambam is the only one, right, who actually jumps on the details, right? And it does make sense that Mayim should refer to somewhere in the Chumash where we actually have two kinds of waters. And the pasuk in Bereshis is, right, by Abdel Bein Mayim Lamayim, right? Don't say Mayim is the same, because God has separated them and they're different. Like there's a line in the Rambam that's very appealing and makes a tremendous amount of sense. Right now at the end of this class, we actually might say to ourselves, I think I'm in the Pardes. I don't know what's happening here. So the last thing I'll say, then I'll just take questions, because there's really not a tremendous amount of material at all on this, but I did want to give a class on it, so and I think next week I have a wedding, but after that, maybe we'll take some of Elisha ben Avuya's statements in Pirkei Avos and see how they tie into all of this. And then we'll put them to bed. Much more time is spent on what were his sins, can we learn his Torah, right? But that makes sense, because does it really matter what the Pardes is? Not really, because how many of us are getting there? Right. The more real questions are, does, like, let's say with the start of the Yerushalmi, right? Divine justice, does that lead to heresy? That's a real question. I mean, people really struggle with these things, right? Everyone struggles at some level with, why does this happen? How did it happen to me? Right? I mean, on different levels, and bad and worse, right? Some people certainly have bigger questions than others, no question. Like those are real questions that people deal with. Should we learn, right? Should we learn Mati Elon's Torah? Should we sing Karbach songs? Right? Those are much more serious questions that occupy the Chachamim's time. It seems really like nobody spent too much time on the Pardes because it just wasn't a reality for anyone. So why bother? And there really is. This is not much more than you have here, unless you, again, if you want to venture into Kabbalistic works, God bless, but that's well beyond my anywhere I go. But in the rational realm of Torah study, it really just becomes these two different paths with slightly different descriptions of souls or malachim or whatnot. And I think as fascinating as it is, it doesn't really matter at all. With that, we finish up. We've concluded our study of the actual Pardes. Yes.
So we're taking this at face value that this really happened. These four guys together went somewhere, and this all happened around the same time. It's not like one guy went one day, and had a reaction with another, and they went like it actually happened, or it's an allegory. It's a story, and it's not a mushal, or it's a story that never really happened, but this would happen if that were an existent thing.
That's a fascinating question. I could go either way. I don't think you have to believe. I mean, it's a lot less fun, right? It's a lot more fun to like kind of picture them, passing the hookah around, and I don't know,
Mushroom.
right? I mean, go back to Yossi Bick. There you go. But on these kinds of things, do we know if it? I have no idea, right? Not necessarily. They're certainly reading it as if it was, but maybe it's just a way of thinking about these things. It's possible, but a lot less fun. All right, wish everyone a good night.
Yeah.